Hello, welcome back to the internet. So I just got done freezing my butt off working at the haunted house tonight, and now I just get to sit in my comfy chair and get spooked. The scary stories for tonight revolve around the theme of what is the creepiest thing you've seen in the woods, or in the mountains, or in deserts, or caves, or in small towns, or in remote or rural areas, or while on large bodies of water, or while on an aircraft or a nautical vessel. I'd been at football training with a few of my cousins when I was about 10 years old. We decided to take a walk before our parents picked us up, so we went along with the canal towpath. My cousin looked down in the canal and saw a really nice jacket floating along, and being a weird scavenger person, decided to reach in and fish it out. Well, the jacket turned over, and so did the man wearing it. He also had no face left. Not gonna lie, that was rough. I'm glad you're able to give me very graphic details about your story without using words that YouTube will get me in trouble for, though I kinda doubt that that's going to keep up in this video. This took place in the Australian bush around 10 or 11 at night. I was 17, leading a staggered column of about 60 cadets to our detachment campsite. Due to light discipline rules, only myself at the very front of the group and the other flight commander at the rear had torches on. This was so that any vehicles coming along the trail could see us, and so that most of the cadets could maintain their night vision. We were camouflaged up, and thus difficult to see at night. As we walked along, I periodically looked to my sides, and kept seeing what looked like dewdrops on the ground, almost like tiny blue gems glinting in my torchlight, either side of the road. I had to maintain my position in the formation, so I couldn't get a good look at what they were. However, after a while, we stopped for a very brief break, and I took the opportunity to have a closer look. Walking over the side of the trail, I spotted a small cluster of the diamonds, and focused my head torch on them. Rather than seeing diamonds, or dewdrops, or anything remotely pleasant, I instead saw a group of about 5 large spiders, just crouching in their leaf litter and staring at me. They looked like huntsmen's, which are about the size of an adult hand. Sweeping my head around, I realized there were thousands of the things, all over the ground, some on the trunks of the trees, and everywhere around me, glaring at the light affixed to my head. I had a very brisk walk back to the formation, and attempted to play it cool while screaming in my head. Being a massive arachnophobe, I had no freaking clue how I managed to set up a tent and spend the next week in that cursed forest. Oh man, this is almost as bad as Harry Potter 2, except that it actually happened. I posted about this before, but back when I was a kid, some friends and I came across people in robes chanting around a campfire out in the woods on the edge of town we lived in. We were staying at a friend's house for a birthday party / sleepover and went for a late night walk. This was back in the late 80s during the Satanic Panic. Looking back now, I'm sure it was just some teenagers goofing around, but at the time it scared the living bejesus out of us. One of the girls had a panic attack and started hyperventilating. Got pretty serious, but we finally managed to get her calmed down. Yeah, stories about people like this really could go either way for me, because yeah, on one hand, maybe they are really a group of very dangerous people, but on the other hand, it could have just been a bunch of awkward losers who think they have magical powers and wanted to start a cult in the woods. It's 2 a.m. We're in a tent in the woods in Maine. I'm about 8. Mom, there's something creeping around outside the tent. You're dreaming. Go back to bed. Mom, there's really something out there. No, there isn't. Just then, something whaps on the side of the tent, hard enough to shake the whole thing, and my mother, who is entirely too tired to deal with this crap, sits bolt upright and whaps right back at the same spot. And from outside the tent, we hear, meow. It was a house cat. We didn't hear anything more the rest of the night. Hey, never underestimate house cats. They can be pretty vicious. You'll see that in the Faye clip at the end of this video. Not sure how creepy this is, but I was on a week-long camping trip with some friends, and I woke up with a weasel sitting on my chest looking at me. I never knew I could scream that loud. You know, it really doesn't matter what the creature is. Anytime there's some kind of insect or small animal or large animal that is getting very close to you while you are asleep, it's always going to be a little bit uneasy when you figure that out. I know a guy who was out boating and found a body in the water. The police told him to send a picture to the Coast Guard. He used the number he thought they gave, and got a text back going, "What the heck is that?" Needless to say, he had not texted the Coast Guard. It's like, why are you sending me a dead body? Oh, sorry, wrong number. I felt like running at night last year because the park near where I live gets all pretty with the lights on in the dark. So after 5 minutes into the exercise, I feel the need to adjust my shoes because I've forgotten to wear longer socks and they were hurting my ankle. I look up and I see this dark silhouette running towards me at full speed wearing a hoodie about 50 meters away. I was on the left side of the street and he was on the right side, so it was clear he was running towards me. I legit almost crapped my pants and felt an adrenaline surge. I thought about fighting him if he got any closer, but in a blink of an eye, the person trips, falls, face planted on the ground, and starts crawling in my freaking direction again. F that, dude is committed, I'm leaving. Maybe he just had something he really needed to tell you. I was a Boy Scout, camping with a group of older buddies and an adult leader in Yellowstone. We'd been backpacking for 2 days, and stopped in a little beautiful clearing at the bottom of some huge tree-covered hills. The sun started to set, we made fire, and I began to climb up the trees to dig a hole and fill it back up. You know what I mean. As I squat there, basking in the moonlight and appreciating the glow of the fire among the trees, I look up to a ridgeline a few hundred yards away where the moon was rising, and I crap you not, I saw a big cougar crest on the hill and just watch our fire. It was likely no danger to me, but seeing that outline, the unmistakable shoulder crawl they do, was haunting. I watched it sit there for a good 15 minutes until I was called back by my worried buddies. I pointed the cat out to them when I had got done because it was still just watching us. Crazy. You know, I've never been really a big fan of camping, especially like out in tents, but I certainly don't know how anyone can like sleep well after knowing that there's a wild animal that's been watching them. My girlfriend and I were hiking along some abandoned railroad tracks, and we got to a small bridge going over a little creek. I'm about to go explore under the bridge when she points something out. I look over, and in the woods across from us, I see a guy. I'm like, whatever, and keep heading down the creek area, and then the guy stands up and he's naked. We immediately backtrack pretty quickly to get away from there, and once we're like 1 minute down the trail, I look back and this naked dude is just standing in the middle of the trail, watching us walk away. Maybe he was a werewolf and didn't realize that he had already transformed back into a human. In order to get back home from a popular kebab restaurant, I need to walk a short path through the woods. Along the way, there's an extremely old abandoned, partially collapsed chapel, and occasionally I'll stand there for a few seconds admiring it. It's quite beautiful in its own way. One day, during winter season, I decided to rest there for a minute, so I placed my kebab on the bench right next to the chapel, and just stood there taking in the scenery. It was already rather dark, and the woods were almost completely silent, but right as I was about to continue my walk, I heard footsteps rapidly getting louder. It was a child running towards me, and as soon as it realized I was there, it started to repeatedly scream, "Run! He is coming!" or variations of that same sentiment. I was a bit perplexed by the situation, so I watched the child run past me without moving an inch myself. It didn't take another second for a much more weighty pair of footsteps to appear. I could make out a silhouette in the distance, which seemed to be their origin, and at that exact point in time, I got really scared. As opposed to running, I decided to hide in the chapel next to the altar, and after tripping over an old broken chapel bench, I reached for my hiding place. The footsteps got louder and louder, but right as they approached the vicinity of the chapel, they suddenly went silent. About 15 seconds of complete quietness had passed, just for the words, "Oi, you friggin' idiot left your kebab on the bench," to break the silence. Turns out it was a resident of the very same street I inhabit. His nephew was visiting, and he wanted to race him to the kebab stand. I don't know whether this was the right place to post this. Ultimately, this is more stupid than creepy. Well, at least the first half was a horror story. My friend and I were chilling in the woods one day back in high school and see a dog walking by, later followed by this kid. He looked troubled, so we asked if he needed help. He obliged, telling us he was dog sitting for his friend and the dog got loose. So we spent a good hour following this dog and kid around, going deeper and deeper into the woods. Eventually, I finally got the dog to come to me, but it wasn't wearing a collar, so I wasn't able to get a hold. My friend and I looked away just for a few seconds to discuss strategy, and when we turned back around, the boy and the dog are both gone. It was like they completely vanished. Keep in mind that it was autumn, so any footsteps could be heard from quite far, but it was just silent. Not a single trace of them anywhere. Still don't really know what happened. Maybe they ran away real quick? Who knows? Was definitely enough to creep us out, though. Yeah, that's when you just shrug it off and say, well, not my problem anymore. I was hiking in northern Quebec, doing some exploration work for geologists. The thing about northern Quebec is that it has forests, mountains, hills, pretty much all green, black, and gray. Except that in the middle of the forest we hiked through, we found this strange all-yellow patch of grass in a perfect circle, about the diameter of a medium-sized house. It was almost perfectly flat, too. Caught us off guard. Yeah, I've heard a lot of theories about what things like this could potentially be. You know, I'd probably guess it was something to do with like the park rangers or the power company just clearing out a space for something, but that's a boring answer, so let's just say it was like an alien landing zone. I was walking with family when I was little, and we came across a sheep's head. No body or blood, just a severed sheep's head on the path. It was the first time I noticed sheep's eyes had slit pupils, and I think it was my first contact with something so gruesome. Yeah, the majority of the stories that ended up in this question were just people running into dismembered animal bodies. I'm not saying they wouldn't be scary to run into, but they don't make for good stories when you read so many of them. During a YMCA camp, about 15 to 20 years ago, I was around 11 to 13 at the time. We were camping in tents in a forest area. It was the middle of summer, so stayed light till around 10 p.m., 11 p.m. till it was fully dark. So we go on a night walk with the group and are halfway into the forest when we notice someone definitely not belonging to our group following us. Camp leaders rushed us back to camp and put us into our tents with that one leader staying up to watch us. Cue halfway through the night. Wake up and have to pee like a madman. Get out of the tent to walk to the bathroom and see the leader that was supposed to watch us asleep in his chair by the campfire. I look around and see that the guy that was following us earlier has opened up and is peeking into one of the tents, while fumbling in a bag he has next to him. I screamed louder than I've ever screamed in my life. The leaders wake up, jump the guy, and hold him till the police arrive. Turns out he had a taser, blindfold, rope, and several knives in his bag. Man, not a very good watchman. I guess it would feel safer if you go camping with a large group of people at least. I was working in a forest in East Africa for a while. It was getting seriously dark, and we were hiking back to the car. The wind was quite strong, but you could still hear some ruffling in the leaves, and as I turned around, I saw something quite big in the shrubs. It was a freaking leopard. I shrieked, and some guy from the group shot into the air to scare the animal away. I'm glad he didn't shoot the animal, but was still glad when the animal bolted out of there. You know, I often think it would be pretty creepy being like 100 miles out into the woods, far away from all civilization, but it's even crazier to think about what it would be like being out in the wilderness of like Africa. I mean, that just seems like a whole different world. I was a cook on board several NOAA research ships. Up in the Bering Sea, I saw what appeared to be a massive, black, triangular-shaped craft dive under the water. I viewed it from a distance of maybe 2 nautical miles. Well, I wish there was more to this story. I'd probably have to guess it's some kind of a secret military thing. You never know what might be going on out in the ocean. This is probably less scary than a lot of the other posts, but I was pretty sure I was going to be the nameless victim at the start of a horror movie to show how dangerous the monster is. Basically, my dad and I were walking through the woods when we came across a young moose leg lying on the ground. It looked like it had been violently torn off, with no sign of the rest of the moose anywhere. It was fresh, with blood still on the ground, probably no more than a couple hours old. My dad is a pretty skilled hunter, so he handed me his axe that he was carrying, and told me to watch for wolves while he started looking for tracks. After a little bit, he came back saying, "That's weird. Normally if it was wolves, you'd be able to find paw prints, but I can't see any. Also, no bear prints, so I have no idea what killed this." And so I'm like, "You didn't find any tracks at all?" And his very reassuring response was, "Well, I did find what appears to be the mama moose tracks headed this way," showing me the tracks. "You can see how her stride is a lot longer here. Whatever killed her baby, she didn't want to fight it. She just took off running." He then pulls out his bear spray and holds it at the ready, as we kept walking deeper into the woods, with the unnamed, non-track leaving predator armed with bear spray and an axe. You know, I wish we could hear scary stories from animals that have to live in the woods all the time. I mean, there's probably plenty of things that we think are terrifying that some animals are just completely used to by now, but there's probably a lot of deer out there that would have a pretty good story to tell if they could tell it. In Auburn, Alabama in 2008. It was Halloween and we googled haunted houses. I can't remember what the website was like, or if there even was one, but it was like 45 minutes away. I know that it wasn't like a big attraction, and we figured it was on someone's land and would be like a local deal. We drove out there at like 10 p.m. This was before iPhones and GPS, so we had MapQuest directions. We ended up going down a pretty country road for a while with no streetlights, then turned down a legit dirt road that went through the woods. Pitch black. We went down it for like 10 minutes and finally saw an old house with a sign by the driveway that was handwritten and said, "Haunted House." No other cars or lights or people anywhere. We pulled in the driveway and sat there for a second like, alright, this is messed up, we should leave. All of a sudden, an old pickup truck turned on, about 15 feet in front of us, facing us. Lights shining right in our faces. It started driving towards us, down their own driveway. We backed out and peeled out. It followed us, like almost bumping our rear end, right on our tail down this pitch black dirt road in the middle of the Alabama woods. We were flipping out. It was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre / Hills Have Eyes stuff. He stayed on our tail, blinding us and almost bumping us all the way back home until we got off an exit and he finally let us go. No idea who was driving. I always think what would have happened if we had gotten out of the car when we were in that driveway. Well, you showed up looking for something scary and you got it. Plus you got it for free, so I would say you got a good deal. Well, I hope you enjoyed another weekend of scary stories. You know, we're still going to have quite a few more this October. So if you have any good stories of running into anything creepy or any wild creatures out in the wilderness, go ahead and share it. But for now, you'll just have to experience the most vicious creature of them all.